What's happening, people? It's Guna Souls. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share because we're going to be talking about Granit Xhaka and Partey both being sold after the season we've just had. The title challenging midfield is going to be dismantled. Is this progression or regression? Let's discuss. Welcome, people. First things first, hit that subscribe button, like and share, and leave your comments down below on what you think about the topic today. We're going to be discussing Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey, both integral to Arsenal's title challenge this season and the season that we've generally had. They have been pivotal in that midfield in terms of bringing the system to life and letting Mikel Arteta really experiment and progress the system within Arsenal. They have been dynamic and both have really had redemption seasons in terms of Thomas Partey staying fit and available for large parts of the season with very little injury problems. Granit Xhaka, the redemption arc from the villain that he was in the Arsenal fan base to a brilliant season to send him off on. We're going to discuss what this means and is this progression or is this regression for Arsenal to be dismantling two of the midfielders who helped us get to the stage that we're at. Let me know what you guys think of this as well. Do you think we should be selling both or keeping one? We're going to be discussing them as a pairing as well as individuals and who we need to keep at the club if the decision comes to keeping just the one. Now, what you've got to take into consideration is what are we going to be doing moving forward? Three signings have been nearly confirmed and kind of secured in Declan Rice, Kai Havertz, and Urian Timbers. One being a defender, two being what's supposed coming out from the media is a midfield signing in Kai Havertz and Declan Rice. And obviously, in an emergency, Kai Havertz can play in the attacking lineup as well. So that kind of brings us on to an interesting question because it doesn't seem like our transfer stops there. It looks like we're still going for the likes of Romeo Lavia. It looks like we've inquired about Thuram as well for the French midfielder in Ligue 1. I don't know too much about him, but a lot of people do rate him highly. So it seems like our business, and also Moses Caicedo, is still not completely done, even though the media does think that. And we have withdrawn interest for the time being because we want to get Declan Rice done. We want to see what we're going to be doing with the likes of Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey, whether both be sold or one stays and one gets sold. Now, when it comes to it, the speculation is Granit Xhaka will demand a fee around 15 to 20 million euros or 20 million pounds. Whereas Thomas Partey has had interest from the Saudi Pro League for a rumoured fee of around 40 million euros. Now, when you really look at it, for us to be able to push on forward, it does seem like Thomas Partey's money coming in is more significant for Arsenal to reinvest into the club and bring a top touted talent such as a Romeo Lavia, and you can even bring in the likes of Kefren Turam, for that type of money. The only people who come out of the bracket are the likes of Moses Caicedo, who's 60 to 80 million, which would be a few more players need to go on before we can recoup the amount to spend on that kind of player. We've already spent around 200 to 210 million pounds given the add-ons and everything that's going on. So it's a significant amount of our budget gone. And I do think anyone else that comes in will be done via player sales. So it brings us on to an interesting question. Do we dismantle the title challenging midfield and allow two of the key starting 11 players to come out of this team and just having Odegaard, Declan Rice and Kai Havertz running that midfield as starting players? Bearing in mind, when you look into the bench, it gets no better because then you've got the similar mold of players in Fabio Vieira, Emil Smith-Rowe, to come off the bench, whether El Neni stays or goes. Then you've got the likes of Sambi Lokonga, whether he stays and goes. And if, for example, we do sell Partey and Xhaka, who comes in? Is it going to be Romeo Lavia? Is it going to be the likes of, Thuram? Is it going to be anyone else? Is it going to be, we go back in for Zubimendi? We don't really know what this the fifth player that we could potentially be signing could be. And it's going to be an interesting one because there is another big name being rumored to be joining, but no one seems to know who this player is going to be. And that's going to be contingent, in my opinion, on Partey or Xhaka leaving. Now, for me, it's the perfect time to sell both. And the reason I say this is because purely on age as well. Thomas Partey coming to 30, Xhaka coming to 30. They've got a year left on their contracts. And, you know, we're never going to really recoup the fees we can get now, especially with the season they as individuals have had. Thomas Partey for about 95% of the season was touted as one of the best midfielders and best six in the league. And in some cases, even ahead of Rodri when we were doing combined 11s. And actually talking to Man City fans, talking to Arsenal fans, there was a genuine debate which wasn't delusional. Now, a lot of people are going to say overall Rodri is the better player. Of course, he's had a better career so far. He's been the better player since coming to the league as well. Whereas with last season in isolation, for most parts of it, Thomas Partey was arguably the best DM in the league. And when you looked at Granit Xhaka as well, you could argue he was amongst the best midfielders in the league, especially in the attacking sense and being, that sort of advanced eight, which is seemingly what we want to keep pushing on to playing and bringing Kai Havertz to do. When you look at Xhaka's return, this is the highest scoring season he's had. This is the highest GA involvement Granit Xhaka's had since joining the club. This has been his best disciplinary season as well in terms of not picking up as many yellow cards, suspensions, or red cards. Available pretty much the whole season. Thomas Partey the same. No disciplinary issues, no, major long-term injury concerns or coming back into the team, getting back out, coming back in, coming out. There was none of that. There was a lot more sort of stability and availability from both of them. And it kind of begs the question, is it detrimental to get rid of both or to keep at least one of them? And if so, which one would be more beneficial to keep? And for me, even though my sort of idea is to kind of get rid of both and improve, because I do think the ceiling for both of them being in the team has been reached. And I don't think we can do any better than what we have done last season. And for us to be able to push on further, we need someone who's got a bit more of a mental grit to them, because when it came to the business end of the season, Thomas Partey did have a major form drop-off, whereas Granit Xhaka kept his form. He wasn't a bad performer. He was the best performer amongst the bad bunch. So it kind of does beg an interesting question, because Thomas Partey is by miles the better technical player, the better all-round player, the more versatile player in terms of playing the 6 and an 8 if needed. But he's also the player who's at the moment bringing in the most money to reinvest for that fourth signing to come in. The likes of Lavia, the likes of Thuram, the likes of even Zubimendi coming to that kind of price tag. And we can recoup the entire amount that we paid for Thomas Partey. And he's brought us back into the Champions League. And we'll recoup the entire amount that we paid Atletico pretty much, which was 45 million euros, but we'd be getting around 40 million, from the Saudi Pro League, if that's where he wants to end up going. So it's interesting because Arsenal over the last sort of 10 years have not been able to recoup fees for these players. So for us to be able to push on and get the amount that we're looking at getting, it's an interesting proposition, and it does bring into an interesting conversation. If it was out of, okay, we don't get rid of both, we get rid of one, it would be Thomas Partey for me, because when it really matters, he's never been there. When he's needed, he's either been injured or he's dropped in form. When you look at it in his previous 2 seasons, an injury record, that's not really good, because when we've needed him in the business end of the season, in those really grit games and big games, he has been injured and been missing. When you look at it this season, granted, he's not had the major injuries. He has missed major games, such as the Man City game when we played them at the Emirates. He was 50-50, and then it came to the game time, and he wasn't available to play. And when it comes to the business end of the season, he had to be taken off. He was benched for Jorginho. That's not a good look. That's not what we need for one of our most experienced and arguably one of the best players at the club, is to drop in form and drop clangers when the team needed him most. I understand William Saliba coming out of the team did massively impact someone like Thomas Partey, but when you've got this level of experience, you are expected to pick up your form and to pick the rest of the team up. You should not be relying on a 21-year-old centre-back to make you good. And that's part of the problem, because when Jorginho came into the midfield, it looked better. Granted, when Kiwior came in, the whole team started to perform to some level of what we've seen throughout the season. Rob Holding is a massive gaping hole in this team, but it still doesn't excuse, Thomas Partey dropping the performances he did when we most needed him. He was part of the reason we challenged for the league, but he was also the reason we didn't go on to win the league. And it's a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of people because we do know what he has to offer. But at the same time, we need to start being ruthless and we need to start thinking about winning because we're not a club that's satisfactory of a top four team and just picking up a domestic cup. We need to push on for those major honours, the Premier Leagues, Champions Leagues, and start making our name in European football. Next season is going to be the toughest Premier League season we've probably had in the last 10 to 15 years. A lot of teams are strengthening. A lot of teams are going for same types of players. We're all kind of picking from the same pool of players. And it's going to be a very interesting season, especially because there's no major rebuild projects other than Chelsea and Tottenham. United have had a season under their manager. Pep is still at Man City. Klopp looks like he's being backed and reinvested in. The only two that may have an excuse are Spurs and Chelsea because they're the only two teams who seem to be bringing in a project. Newcastle have had Eddie Howe for a while. They seem to know what direction they're going in, and they're just going to be looking to improve. So we need to do the same. We need to push on and bring in players who aren't going to have that level of drop-off. Now, keeping Partey and Xhaka in the squad would be ideal, but we also do need to think about the age factor, the fact that their contracts are coming to an end, and when is it the perfect time to sell? We don't want to come into the same problems that we did with Aubameyang. Granted, Aubameyang did have a bit of an attitude issue, but it wasn't like he was performing to world-class standards in that very season. As soon as he signed his big contract for 300,000, 350,000 a week, he started to drop performances that were just never seen from him. The levels that he showed in terms of the FA Cup win, the goals he was scoring, they just all went. It all disappeared in moments. So we need to stop making that mistake with the likes of Mesut Ozil being another example. Is this going to be another one if we do sign them onto an extension that we could come to regret and actually think, what, imagine we did go get a Lavia or a Thuram before they became the players that they will become for Liverpool's or the Chelsea's, etc. So that's where we need to think. We need to think about the future as well. Are there going to be players like Lavia available next season or the season after when we do eventually then move on from the likes of Thomas Partey or Granit Xhaka, if we do end up keeping them? And we also need to think about what do we prioritize next season, because attackers is going to be an important one. We do need to start looking at strikers, and we don't want to be doing too many rebuilds in too many windows. And that's personally how I feel. Do the Cronkies continuously put money into the club, or do they now want to recoup some of their money back from player sales for us to further, build and strengthen the team? So it does pose that kind of question to me. And for me, if it was my way, I would sell both, bring in £60 million or 60 million euros for both of them, and actually reinvest that into a project DM, because we've got Declan Rice, we've got Kai Havertz, we've got ESR, Fabio Vieira, we've got all the players that can come in and just do a job. So we can invest in someone that's ready now, but it's a bit rough, such as a Lavia. Leave your comments down below. Do subscribe, like, and share. Do follow me on all socials, Insta, Twitter, and YouTube, or Guna Souls. Hope you guys have a good day. Take care. Peace.